Here's a continuation of my actual reading of the book. That's to be a book. I'm still searching. This is part 2, and I continue talking about atheism versus science, free thinking versus science. That whole realm. Now, one of the greatest writers of our time, Joyce Carol Oates, is an atheist, but is confused, or seems confused, when the so-called believers act rudely, when they don't understand or respect her worldview. In a recent editorial, Oates states, quote, "As a novelist, I tend to be sympathetic with persons who are religious, though I cannot share in their convictions. It has always been something of a mystery to me that intelligent, educated men and women, as well as the uneducated, can have faith in an invisible and non-existent God. Why instead is humanism not the preeminent belief of mankind?" she says. Why don't humans place their faith in reason and in the strategies of skepticism and doubt, and refuse to concede to traditional customs, religious convictions, and superstitions? Well, that's very well articulated, in my opinion. I guess you would expect the most excellent writing from such a living legend, one of the greatest writers of all time. Oates continues to explain her atheism as something she wouldn't like to advertise, like Christopher Hitchens aggressively does. She says, "I have met Chris Hitchens once or twice, and he has a book that I'm sure you've either read or are aware of, titled God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. He's very adversarial, very eloquent, and very funny in his interviews. And of course he is very much a self-declared atheist. I'm not averse to acknowledging it, but as a novelist and a writer, I really don't want to confront and be antagonistic toward people. As soon as you declare that you're an atheist, it's like somebody declaring that he is the Son of God. It arouses a lot of anger, a lot of antagonism. I'm wondering whether it might be better to avoid arousing this antagonism in order to find, not compromise, but maybe some common ground. I think that is so wise to attempt to seek common ground. It seems like Hitchens was picking a fight because of his insatiable appetite for debate. Of course, Chris is no longer with us. Christopher Hitchens died at the age of 62 about a year ago. What I'm attempting to do with my discussions with my lay minister at church is the civil and respectful discussion, which does not attempt to win at all costs, but to reconcile perceived differences. I really want to seek out the nature of friendship and how the power of friendship can heal the greatest divide. I aim to subtly destroy the irrational boundaries set up by religion and simultaneously the apparent closed-minded thinking of the extremist atheist, or the nihilist. That's not an easy task. Will my friend cling to the friendship or a rational belief system? Or maybe it doesn't have to be either or. Maybe that's okay too. One of the basic differences between religious thinkers and free thinkers, in my opinion, is that those who believe in original sin often think that man is inherently evil and that he or she must be saved. The humanist many times believes in the good of man, that a young mind, in Descartes' language, is tabula rasa, but with much potential to grow in ethical awareness. There's no such thing as original sin in the mind of a compassionate humanist thinker. Bertrand Russell once said, quote, "A good world needs knowledge, kindliness, and courage. It does not need a regretful hankering after the past or a fettering of the free intelligence by the words uttered long ago by ignorant men." Yes, Bertrand, a world based upon courage and love is preferable, and not a world of fear of something that may not exist. Robert Ingersoll refutes original sin too. Intellect without heart, he says, is infinitely cruel. So that after all, the real aristocracy must be that of goodness, where the intellect is directed by the heart. The intellect directed by the heart. The late Robert F. Kennedy also talked about the inherent good, not the inherent original sin of mankind, when he said, "It is from the numberless diverse acts of courage and belief that human history is shaped. Each time A man stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice. He sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring. Those ripples build a current that can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. There are sites on the internet which tend to try to make people like Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, or Christopher Hitchens look unintelligent. On one such YouTube site, you can see someone trying to portray Dawkins as somebody who doesn't know how genomes evolve. He was asked how genetic mutations can occur, which can increase the amount of information in the genome. It appears the video was spliced to make him look confused and indecisive. Clearly people with agendas here. Why would somebody want to do this? The answer may be that the detractors' egos are so fragile that they must strike out against good and decent men in order to feel good themselves in some sort of way. The irrational will want to strike out against the rational at all costs to win their point if there is an ego at stake. We've all had situations involving friends or former friends where the arguments get to the point of bringing the other person down at any cost. To me, that's the ultimate in immaturity, really. So how could there be a personal God? I will take Einstein's or Stephen Hawking's God over the God of Dr. Francis Collins' antiquated conception. There's a caring being. Is there a caring being up there in the sky who has compassion for all of us, who can read our minds? A celestial North Korea, as the late Hitchens said. I find it hard to believe this. Let's think about this. For the Supreme Being to be able to read our minds, there would have to be a sort of telepathy, some sort of creature so highly evolved that he or she or it could tell what we are thinking and could perhaps guide or predict our future, maybe. Now, logic does not support believing in a supernatural power. One has to break the bonds of logic in order to get there. One has to demand the most rigorous standards of evidence, especially to what's important to us. We don't have to accept the many fraudulent claims which are out there. Maybe pure faith is not enough. Maybe we have to have some logical support too. I'm officially going on the record here in support of Spinoza's God. That's the end of part 2. As we divide this up in roughly 7-minute segments for the duration of the paper. And this long essay is going to be similar to one of Sam Harris's short books, I think, on sort of analogous to the Christian Letter to a Christian Nation, basing it on my conversation between two of my best Christian friends, Tim and Tom. So, and I going to be learning more about Tom too, as our friendship is still developing. But Tom's a strong Christian, but with a heart of great compassion. So that's why I find him very interesting, is this compassion that he feels. So we'll keep following the searching road here. That's part 2. It's complete now.